So, Pauline, we know that rates have gone up again, that slow squeeze. I think it's important to look about it, not just about weekly or monthly, but how much extra people are going to have to pay every year on top of where they were a couple of years ago. And then the arrogance of the Treasurer that he acknowledges petrol is part of the problem when it comes to inflation, but won't try to cut the tax by 25 cents that would help everyone. And he's got $20 billion extra in the surplus.
Well, he's got $20 billion extra in the surplus. Remember, there was $50 million also, and $50 billion in the surplus from the previous government that they didn't even know about, and they've got the surplus again from the coal and our iron ore exports and agriculture as well. Paul, this government has spent $188 billion since they've taken over government. That's extra spending they've put on, nearly $200 billion extra spending that they have spent on people. Look, when Morrison took off the tax on the petrol, that was because I pushed for it. I actually pushed that the government had to take the tax off. I called for a year. Morrison made it 6 months. There has to be some relief to the people out there. The cost of living is killing them. But, Paul, I think the main thing is the cost of electricity. That is more important to the people, because cost of this electricity, you can't keep subsidising electricity. It's due to government policy, the climate change policies, the transmission lines, everything that they're bringing in, the renewables. It is costing us. That's where the cost is. If you bring down the cost of electricity, that will actually mean the supermarkets won't be charged as much because the cost of refrigeration, everything is based around the cost of electricity. So I know the fuel, they're calling about fuel, but I'm telling you, it has to be electricity. Go and build some more coal-fired power stations, which I've been calling for years. Build the coal-fired power stations. Give us dispatchable power, cheap power. They have admitted we can't meet net zero. We cannot get to 83% emissions free. It is just bloody bunkum. It's bloody lies they're telling the Australian people. Hydrogen won't work. It's never worked anywhere in the world. This is another load of bloody bunkum that they're feeding the Australian people, and they're lapping it up because you don't understand. The only way the Australian people is going to really understand this, Paul, is they've got to keep hurting in the hip pocket to realise, stop voting for these bloody idiots and putting you through the hurt and pain that you're going through at the moment. Remember, the 12th interest rise is under this government, and because of their extra spending is creating inflation. Look at the government for all the problems that you are feeling today.
Well, again, when we talked about petrol, that was what, about 19 and a bit percent. Electricity, 1 month alone, the last month that's just been, Matt, it was an 18% increase. The average is, what, 5.4%. Again, you don't have to be sort of the Bush economist here. It's just, again, we've always said that the issue with Labor's endless march from, Rudd to Gillard to Shorten to Albanese to move from one electricity system to another was the cost of that transition. We are paying it. It's trillions of dollars. It is part of the inflation mix, and you not only pay for it through your bills, you're now paying for it when it comes to your home loan.
Exactly right, Paul. I mean, you see it every time your power bill turns up. We've been installing renewable energy at a record rate. Solar and wind have been going up in this country. These factories right across our prime agricultural land has been going up at a record rate, more than anywhere else in the world. And every time you get a power bill, your costs go up. They go up and up and up and further. I noticed today that back in May last year, just before the election, Anthony Albanese tweeted out that Australians are suffering under a triple whammy of higher grocery costs, higher interest rates, and higher power prices. And he said he's got a plan. The government, the Australian people deserve a plan from someone who knows how to tackle this stuff. Well, we're nearly 2 years in now. 2 years into an Albanese government, and he hasn't delivered on the promises he made at the last election, including cutting your power bills by $275. He said that nearly 100 times before the election. Hasn't since, completely ignored it since. And he's completely failing now to deal with any of these crises. I just wanted to add something about your proposal on the petrol levy, the fuel levy. Normally I wouldn't agree with that because I'd want to see the money go into roads. But the other thing you might have noticed, Paul, in the last few days is that the government has announced that they're going to cut back on infrastructure spending. Well, that's about to happen. They're about to drop that and say they're not going to spend as much money on roads. Well, if they're not going to spend as much money on roads, why are we paying nearly 40 cents a litre at the petrol browser to them? If they're not going to spend the money on the roads, give us the money back.
Well, I agree. But again, my simple point was, OK, you can't turn around and cut a cheque for $1,000 because that is going to be inflationary. This is one of those things that they'd be able to deal with. I agree with Pauline as well about power bills. I'm just talking about an automatic thing they could do tomorrow, but the Treasurer, petrol's a massive part of the inflation. Are you going to cut the tax? No. It's like just because he wants the gold star going into the next election.